All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Plotting for Success. As you guys can see, we have a special guest today, and we're going to go over the most important food plot, important food plot step that we've talked about in the past, and it comes down to getting those soil tests done. So today we have with us Chris from Ag Source. How's it going, Chris?
Good morning. Everything's going great here in Wisconsin, where I'm coming to you from.
Good deal. Yeah, I'm actually in Kentucky. Doug's in northern Wisconsin. Right now, we have some really bad storms, which we've had a drought. I mean, for a while, we haven't been getting a lot of rain, which is obviously an important part to planting and crops and all those things. So I'm gonna hand it over to you, Doug, and let's get this thing kicked off, and let's really get into the nitty gritty of why soil testing and all these different things are super important and really help everybody learn why it's the first step that people need to take.
Here's a little history background. I think I met Chris, I don't know how many years ago. I think it was at a Green Bay show, believe it or not. And then we were working on, and I mean, you and your husband are avid hunters, and we started talking about, soil and testing. And then you said, well, I work for Ag Source. And I said, man, I wish I could get my customers to understand how important it is to do a soil test. And then we just kind of coexisted together. It seemed like it kind of just all kind of fell into place. And he said, well, let's just make up a kit, just specifically for your blends, which will actually help the customer. And we called it idiot proof, which I'm not saying our customer's an idiot because nobody is, but it was just to make it simplified. Because to me, our health of a plant, which, Chris and I, we went over and over and over again, is so important to the health of wildlife. And they all kind of coexist with each other. And it's no different than, you can have healthy grass and you can have actually grass that really doesn't have a lot of value. It depends on the health of the plant. So, Chris, if you would not mind just kind of giving a little bit about your background, exactly where you started and how this is kind of actually blowing up, because I know we go through a lot of kits. And hopefully that ain't too much for you guys. I think it's probably what you're really looking for. But I think this is one thing that, I really wanted to touch base on, because when a customer calls me up, the first thing I ask them is, what's your pH? And I'm going to say it used to be 90%. What is that? I don't know. Never done a test. My soil's good. I don't need one. I'm getting all these answers. And I'll share this little story with you real quick before we get onto it. I had a customer like 2 years ago. He told me right out, he says, oh, I got the best soil, but I can't grow anything. And I'm like, how do you know it's best soil? Because it's black. Well, black does not necessarily mean that it's good soil. It could mean that it's probably got a lot of good properties to it. So he went and he tested it, and he's struggling growing crops. He's been trying to grow plots for 3 years, I think it was. He went and tested it. It was 4.9, and he's like, "Oh my gosh!" I said, "He goes, is that bad?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He needed 12 ton of lime to the acre. You're not going to grow much in that, and if you do, your plants are not going to have a lot of nutritional value as a whole. So he reluctantly started putting down, lime. Couldn't do it all at once because of money wise. But after 3 years now, last year he grew one of the best plots he's ever grown, and a lot of it goes back down to Ag Source doing that test and educating them. So with that being said, Chris, why don't you just kind of do your little brief little thing at your introduction, and then go right into what you do, how you do it, why is it important, and anything like that, and we'll just chime in as you go.
Yeah, perfect. So my name is Chris Clark. I work for Ag Source Laboratories. Our company has been around like 51 or 52 years. I forgot to check exactly what it is this year. And we started actually as a milk testing laboratory, but then we are a cooperative, which means that we are farmer owned. And so the farmer said, hey, another big thing that we have to do is test our soil so that we know how much manure or fertilizer to put on each year. And so we were charged with that, many years ago, and started up a soil laboratory. And we have some of the best state-of-the-art equipment. So one of the things that Doug really likes is we have really good turnaround time. So we try to tell people, if I'm talking to them or Doug's talking to them, we are a Monday through Friday business. So if something does happen to arrive on a Friday, that's probably the only time that it'll be a little bit longer. But then once that soil arrives at the laboratory, we have to dry it for one day. We have this gigantic drying room, and we want the soils to be dry. You guys don't have to worry about doing that. We have a certain temperature and percentage that we want to get it dried down to so that it works really good for our analytical machines. And then the next day it is it's processed, and each of our technicians come in and get those things. And then the other thing that I've learned talking to people is it's not just one machine that we put it in and it spits out all of your results. It's a lot of different recipes for each of the nutrients that we're testing in the soil, and there's a different machine that does that. And then we have really sophisticated software that then takes all of those individual reports or results and puts them into the specific report that that customer is looking for. And so we have a wildlife food plot report, and we do have a wildlife food plot kit that comes out to you. And so these, Doug always has a supply of them. If he's at a show or if you have ordered seed from him, he wisely mails it out, because that is so important to his seed being successful, is the customer knowing if the soil has what it needs. And when he brought up that example of pH, I have talked to people about their pH, and one of them is when you get to those extremes. So the report does a really good job of saying, what are you really high in? You really don't have to pay attention to that except for pH. And then what are you really low in? And those things, we help the customer understand that and then give them recommendations of how to move forward. And the kit gives also, so that you have a good report or analysis, is you have to take a good sample first. So we talk about making sure that your sample is representative, or you even have to take a couple of steps backwards sometimes with people and say, have you even chosen a spot that you want to do your food plot? And talk about some of those things. So just because you have an open spot in your woods doesn't mean that that's the best spot to put your food plot, because there's maybe a reason why there's not even trees growing there. Probably because the soil layer is too thin, there's not as many nutrients there. And then you also have to think about sunlight. So a lot of the crops that we're talking about, they do require sunlight and water. So trimming back some of the branches and getting those things away is really important. And maybe you've had a food plot there for 10 years. It's probably a good time to go back and trim those branches back because they have overgrown into your food plot again.
How important is sunlight to you, Chris? Not to interrupt you, but I get this all the time. What have you got for shaded areas? I get this all the time, and not to get away from it. I just remember getting this question a ton of times, and you just touched on something that the average food plotter doesn't even think about: sunlight. So touch base on that real quick while you're talking about that.
Yeah, so you either get one or the both. You get a shady forest or you get a food plot. So you have to get rid of some of the trees so you can have a successful food plot, or you're just going to have a shady, sparse food plot that's not going to really succeed. And so that's the same thing with the soil test, is you really don't know what's going on your soil until you do test it. And so I try to liken it to you going to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, I need a blood test. And they can tell a lot about, how good is your diet, how well have you been working on your cholesterol. That's what the soil test is doing. And so we tell a lot of people, don't guess soil test. And so within that area that they have chosen for the food plot, you can simply take a shovel, or you can borrow maybe from your county a soil probe, and that will help you go down and pull a core about 6 to 8 inches deep. And then we like you to do several sub-samples. So if you think about a square area and then just kind of doing a zigzag through the entire plot, and then having that equal 1 sample. And then in the kit will be a soil bag, and we want you to fill that up with all the soil that's inside of there, or from your sub-sample. You'll mix that all up and then put, it says on there, fill to this line. So it's about 1.5 cups worth of soil. And then also inside of there is a free shipping box and envelope to send it back to the lab. You don't even have to worry about the shipping. And then there will be a form inside of there that talks about which type of seed that you're doing. So I think we also need to go and take a step back, because a frequently asked question I get is, I don't even know what an annual is or what a perennial is.
We just talked about this the other day. It's actually, you don't mean to laugh, but they don't know. So I'm glad they ask, because they don't know, you know.
Yep, so just the short of it, so a lot of our annual crops you're seeing out there are corn and soybeans. They will die if they try to get through a winter time. So they're going to grow through their life cycle, they're going to flower and seed, and then the plant dies off. If you see more the next year in your food plot, it's probably because the seeds have fallen and are regrowing. So it's somewhat a little bit confusing to some people. And then a perennial are like our alfalfas and our clovers. They are able and they're hardy enough to grow through the winter time or a cooler time wherever you might live, and then come back the next year. But it's still important to feed them every year. So when you get your soil report back, that's kind of what you should do to maintain that perennial plot each year. And I'm sure Doug's had conversations with people about like, well, I planted this plot, but it's not looking good. And so a lot of times this time of the year, the plot, you can ask them, and I have to do a lot of this stuff over the phone too. So you get really good at asking questions. I don't get the opportunity to go and visit their food plots. So you're taking for granted that they're out there and checking it too. But you can kind of ask like, what color does it look? Most crops, when they're happy, they're like a really deep green. And probably one of the most common nutrients that a lot of people are lacking because of some of the heavy rains that like Brett's getting in his area is nitrogen. And it's just that the soils do not hold nitrogen for very long. And so that's one to kind of give them a little bit throughout each season, whenever you might have a chance to get out there and visit it, is to feed it some nitrogen. And the report will help you with that as well.
Is it safe to say that, you know, you get the more acidic, sandy soils, a lot of times those are the ones that have a lot less nitrogen? Would that be safe to say?
Yeah, so the reason that they have less nitrogen is because they're usually lower in organic matter too. So when Doug was talking about that deeper color, most of those lighter soils don't have as much organic matter. So most productive soils are between 3 and 5%. And each time that you plow and till it up, you actually lose a little bit of that organic matter. How do you get more in? When you mow your food plot, or when you're, if you maybe have a source of manure, that's a great way to add in organic matter too. But leaving leaf litter on it and kind of tilling that into your food plot is all going to help you increase the organic matter.
Emphasis on what I always say when I do my spraying. I spray in one day, and the next day or next 2 days, it's going back in the soil. I always put something green back in, and I try to relay that, especially up here in northern Wisconsin and northern Michigan, are areas that the soil is, like you said, very light, very sandy. There's nothing to stop it. It's very porous. And I tell everybody, if you get 2 to 3 inches of rain at a time, your nitrogen's gone. And they don't want to hear that, but it's reality. There's nothing you can really do about it. It's just reality. So the more you can explain that to people, I think, Chris, that is the biggest thing. You know, putting, you know, like you said, humus, anything in the soil that's going to help to build the soil and make it darker. I've had customers that started out with uber light soil. I mean, like blow sand soil. And through the last couple of years, they keep putting in green. And they said they can't understand how much that soil has changed in color. They never had it that dark. And I'm like, it's all because of it, like you said, the organic matter. So that's very huge.
And I'll help explain that too. When you say add green to it, there is nothing wrong with like taking a rye crop, like a winter rye crop, and then just tilling that in the next year before your desired food plot. And the deer will feed on that throughout the winter. They'll paw through that. It will winter kill, but that's really a nice thing to add to the soil. So then another thing, like this year, how is your food plot doing? Is like you can kind of think about the thickness. So you could look at just a 1 foot by 1 foot area. Are you seeing more weeds than you might be seeing of your food plot crop? So you might think about renovating if that's not the case, and you probably weren't feeding it as much as you should have been. And then compaction, with a lot of the wet that we had last year, were you driving equipment or trucks across it when maybe it was too wet? Try and stay off it as much as possible. And then just overall, the lack of weeds means that you have a really robust, good, healthy crop food plot because you have fed it and did all those things properly. So yeah, overall, you know, the soil is where those plants are getting their nutrients from. So that's why it's so important to get that soil test. And then probably the next biggest thing besides nitrogen is lime. Most people do need lime. And so how do you know what you have is provide the lab with enough information. So that means working with Doug and saying, okay, I picked out this food plot crop and we have all of Doug's in, and then that lets us know what are the main crops, and then we can know the proper pH. And most of them are happy at that 6 range. If you maybe are on a budget and you've tested your soil and you don't have a lot of budget for lime, is then look and work with Doug for what crop is in that pH range that might work well. So for example, if you really have your heart set on alfalfa, that one does require a slightly higher pH at like 6.8. But if yours tested lower than that, maybe he will definitely have better options for you. So sometimes that's an easier way to get that first food plot in. And if you don't have the equipment to spread the lime and stuff, is just pick one of those food plots that the seed will do good with the pH that you have.
And that's where I think, honestly, Chris, we started, you know, with that liquid lime that we've been using from Plot Doctor. It's instantaneous results. And I think a lot of customers, versus the price, you can spray it. And I've had a different, honestly, I went and reached some plots that I tried that needed acre. And it was at like 5.9, 5.8, 5.7s in there. I went and I sprayed it 2 gallons. I had a great crop last year. I did have to fertilize some crops 3-4 times. Most of your customers don't want to pay it, so you're not going to get it. I get it. I understand if it's on a budget. But wherever I went and I refertilized, I went back this year. We did a soil test. They did a soil test back on it. And, man, they were in the mid-6s. They couldn't believe it. And I was actually shocked myself because, you know, just with liquid lime versus granular lime or egg lime, which takes 12 months, 8 months, 12 months to break down. I think just the nutritional value that went into the plant, that the root structure stayed there. And as that broke down, or as they dished that up or tilled that up this year, that stayed there for them. So that they were good for this year, which I was really shocked at. And in fact, I told that to Steve Tatro about this, and he owns Plot Doctor, and he's like, wow, that's good to have residual results coming back, you know. Which leads to one other thing that I wanted to kind of touch base, and I just printed, actually I just printed out one of your things here because all of them come to me, which is nice and not nice, but nice. I had a customer the other day, and he said, I don't know how to read this. Okay. And I'm sure, Chris, you have that in front of you, but the P, the K, the rotation pH, high, low, explain that a little bit in layman's terms so the customer can look at their results, because they print them out because you via email them or hard copy them, which mail them to them, that they could maybe just sit there and go, oh, that makes sense. Duh, I didn't know what that meant. Kind of like the annual perennial thing, if that meant, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, so when you first get it back, the top portion will be pretty much the customer's information. It should have your address, your name. If you ever did need additional questions, it has like the lab sample number, and if you call, and it has our phone number on there too, we can help. If you can't get a hold of Doug, we can help you too. And it helps us look things back up. So something that is quite important is, like I said before, is knowing what crop. So he was saying like the crop rotation. If you know that you're going to be changing it up or something like that, it takes into effect that pH is so important. So that's one of the first things I tell people to look at, and that's the first question Doug asks of his customers is, what's your pH at? So that should be the first thing that you look at. And then it goes into an OM. on our report, and that's just an abbreviation for organic matter. And we talked about that before because that is how the soil works with the nitrogen cycle. So how much of the nitrogen is naturally coming from your soil, and that helps us create the nitrogen recommendation that you'll need for your food
What's
plot.
the optimum that you want at the OM? What is optimum for you, do you feel?
So most soils that that we have people that are using them productively, shall you say, are 3 to 5%. Some of them will be higher. It depends on your state. So I guess 3 to 5% in Wisconsin. We are natively a forested region, so ours are a little bit lower. If you go to the prairie states, theirs are naturally going to be a little bit higher, even if it is farmed ground, because they have such deep, rich prairie soils as their natural how it was natively. Then it'll go into our top 3 nutrients are N, P, and K. So if you were to get fertilizer, there's 3 numbers on there, and let's say it was 10, 10, 10. That would stand for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. So there will be a phosphorus reading on there, and then it's also graphed. So when I said before, it's pretty visual, and you can see if that is too high or it's showing low. One that I happen to be looking at, Doug, that I printed off is showing low. So this one is actually going to need to put on some phosphorus. And then potassium is a little bit of a tricky one because on the periodic table, the symbol for that one is K. And then it will have the laboratory analysis for K. Once again, that's another one that it seems a lot of food plots do require some potassium applications. And then if you were provided more than one crop, it'll talk about your rotational pH. So once again, if you had 3, you can put in actually up to 4 different crops. And it at the lab, we have a program that says, okay, for all 4 of these crops, here's where you should be hitting for your optimal pH. And if you need to add lime, or if you're good at where you're at.
So if your rotational pH is low, which 90% of our customers is low. Explain that. How can they bring that up to optimal?
Yeah, so then you'll look at the recommendation portion of that, and it will have a lime recommendation. So for most of the food plot people, if you're not using the liquid lime, changing your pH with egg lime does take time. So I try to tell people as soon as you are able to and your field conditions are right, you want to get it on there 3 to 6 months before you plant, because it really takes, it's a slower process in the soil. It requires like some rain and more tilling. The more that you can till it in and mix it so that it touches the soil particles, there's chemistry that's happening. We'll keep it at that.
Yes.
And I'm glad that's something you brought up, Doug, because most people, it seems like they always have low pH, if anything else. Like I said, I had that one client that I was working with out in Missouri, and I always go back to that one because it was the worst case scenario. This client had a pH down in the 4s. I mean, it was bad. And he asked me, what can I grow? And quite frankly, nothing right now. I mean, very little. We got to raise that pH, and that's how you do it. You do it through the liquid lime applications or the granular or the egg lime. So that egg lime, like I said, it takes time to break down, and if you don't compensate or calculate for that, you're not going to reap the benefits this first year while doing your food plots.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so like a little bit of patience is required, but it is really important, to get that lime back up there. So like if you even left it at like a 4 or 5 and you still tried to plant something, everything else that you put on is less effective. So if you neglected to look at the lime recommendation, you're like, oh, well, I'll just put the nitrogen on and the phosphorus and the potassium and spend the money on that. You probably are wasting like 60 to 70% of that because it's not even going to be effective because the pH isn't where it should be.
It's just not efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, so bottom line, if you're going to get a soil test done, follow it completely. Don't just pick and choose what you want to basically do with your food plot.
Well, and I said it's the best $18 you'll ever spend. And I've said that to how many different customers, and they're like, I don't want to go through that. And a lot of men are procrastinators. So here's what they're going to do. They're going to sit there and they're going to go, oh, I think I should put in a food plot. And they'll start this in the middle of July, maybe even the end of July. And then all of a sudden, well, oh man, I don't got time to do a pH test. Well, you had all summer, you know, listen, you had all fall. It doesn't matter when you pull your samples. If you think you're going to put a food plot in there next year, pull it in the fall. Just, you know, at least know where you're at. Kind of like what Chris said, you know, if you can get it out earlier and get that work in the soil, and I'm big into weed control, so if you can spray it and get your lime in, spray it, get your lime in, and get it tilled in, you're going to do 2 more weed killings. By that time, you're going to keep putting in green matter in that soil. In a matter of 6 to 8 months, you can build soil that's actually crappy to productive, and you can do this. It's just, you know, the customers are, you know, I think a lot of them are just afraid. They're afraid, and you already are failing by not doing. If you want to be successful, you still have to do. So, you know, I mean, it's all part of the process, and you know, it is what it is. But the average guy, and I always tell everybody this: once you become a food plotter, you're a farmer, and farming sucks. It just does. But you're going to make the best of it, you know. So, I get it. So, but go ahead, Chris. I didn't mean to go on a rant here, but.
Yeah, so then after that, then you'll come to your recommendations portion of the report, and it will have those 3 key nutrients: nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and it will tell you in pounds per acre. So there is some information on the bottom if your plot happens to be less than an acre, and you can convert it down to square feet. How many square feet you might need to apply the things. And then, so that's the main thing, is then making sure that you apply it. And as I said before, if you have a perennial crop that's staying out there for several years, you need to maintain it by putting that on again next year. And so I think that some people think it's like a one-time thing. I only need to do it one time. Or another frequently asked question is like, how often do I need to a soil test? So if you are really changing up the crop that you have done, or if you were, in Brett's example, really doing some serious changes to pH, you probably should do that more annually. And then make sure that you just follow up with the recommendations.
Awesome. I mean, you know, like I said, Chris, you know, we visit from time to time just because you're bringing me over kids, you know, it seems like. But it's nice to honestly put something together where we, you know, the customer, and it's not just our customers. I mean, you guys take care of numerous people other than Hornibug seed customers. I mean, you take care of a lot of different people, but you still are able to relate to them. Okay, what's the next step? How do we do this? How do we do that? And that is, to me, knowledge is power. So the more knowledge you can gather from any of this, the more you're going to win. And I think that's part of the main, you know, goal that we're doing here. As far as so I'm just going to go through. I'm going to go through this guy's test for you, and then you can relate to me what you do. I know this customer. It's just okay. Here's a prime example. This guy stopped in on a whim because of the COVID. He was hoping to catch me home, which he did, and he never done a food plot before. Never did any research on a food plot before. No, doesn't know what he's doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. I was so happy he stopped because, boy, did I give him an education in a short period of time. He wanted to plant something. This was 2 weeks ago. He wanted to plant something immediately. He has never put in a food plot before. He didn't know how to do it, but all he told me was his ground was all tilled. And I said, well, did you spray it? No. I said, okay, are you going to fertilize it? Do you think I should? I said, okay, well, you never done it before, so let's start from Adam. I gave him a soil test kit. He was, I don't want to say reluctant, but this was kind of like, why am I doing this? And I said, just humor me and do it, okay? You don't want to plant nothing now. We're 2 weeks into June, or well, it was actually second week of June. Anyway, short story long, took the kit, called me yesterday. Hey, I got my results. I don't know how to read them. Okay, so I brought them, you know, I went on a computer, printed it out, and actually I took that one in the warehouse. I printed him out another one, but he was at 5.6. So he called me as soon as he got his results back, and he says, hey, I got my results back. I don't know what I'm looking at. And that's why, you know, obviously, Chris, what we were talking about, you know, but everything he had was very low. Even his rotation pH, everything was low. He needed 2 ton of lime to the acre to get, you know, basically where it needed to be. And I told him right out, I said, liquid lime is going to help you this year. But I would still put on your granular, I said, or powdered lime, because at 2 ton, I said, you know, I said, what do I do? Anyways, he went and he's going to get egg line put on. He said, I'm going to bite the bullet and do it right. I was like, wow, this is awesome. I said, leave it for, you know, 20 days. If it greens up, you're going to have to spray, which I know it's going to green up, you know, but his P, his K, and his rotation pH, everything were low and very low. So, you know, I'm just like, man, living, we got to start getting some humus in. He is up near Wasaki, which is north of us, which is, I call it Sandville, because, you know, it's very, very sandy. But in these cases, Chris, what would you tell, you know, what would you, when a customer calls you and tells you this, what is your first recommendation that you tell them?
Yeah, so I would go back and, you know, try and find the easiest food plot crop that he had on his report. So sometimes people, they think big, they got a bunch of them on there. I'm like, well, which one are you really doing first? You know, and if there's an easier one on there, some of the clovers can be pretty tolerant of a lower pH, and they're pretty easy to get established and going. So that might be a good one for him. And plus, you can kind of bottle feed the nutrients. So to someone that's new about it, those numbers are big. You know, when you're talking about 2 ton of lime, or how much pounds of phosphorus that might need to be out there, and with that lighter ground, he's going to have to bottle feed it. We call it split applications. So he is going to have to go out there several times, and the clover, you might be able to run it over and it'll be fine. But he needs to do, he wants a crop out there, obviously, but he still needs to get his nutrients out there so that he can have a different, more desirable crop. Well, red clover is good, but to have maybe a mixed crop in the future. And so yeah, those are some of the things that I would do. If maybe they weren't like super close, you can refer them to like where they might buy their fertilizer. Some of the people there are great, and there are some that are better with food plotters than not with food plotters. So
100% truth on that.
I have some that I know that I could recommend to people, like, oh, you live in this area, try this location. They do really good job with helping out the food plot.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and I have I work with I know the feed mill, Cribbets Feed Mill. They have a truck and they can go out and spread lime. And I just tell the customer, hey, you know, they can get into some pretty good areas. If you can drive a vehicle into there, they can usually get in there. And I tell them, you know, you think of a ton of lime, like, oh my God, that's a lot. But lime is very dense, very heavy. A ton is not as big as a person thinks it is. It's really not, you know. So I said, don't get too scared. You know, I mean, you could take a ton of this and a ton of this, and they might be two totally different, you know, amounts of space. So don't get your underwear in a bundle if somebody says you need 2 tons to the acre, because I mean, it's a lot, but it's not a lot, because an acre is a pretty daggone big area. You know, it really is. So, you know, these are all little things that, you know, I think a lot of people that are not, you know, agriculturists of any kind. I mean, I got a lot of my customers, they never even planted a garden in their life, let alone now they're food plotting. So they need to learn, you know, some of the basics, and it's nothing wrong with learning. I had to learn a lot of this on my own through the years too, but I've been doing it for so many years. Some of it's, like you would say, Chris, secondhand nature. You know, I mean, it's just, you just look at something and you know. I mean, I can go look at a property and I can look at the soil and I can tell just by the weeds that are growing in it if the value. I mean, I got places that can't even grow grass or weeds. I'm like, man, you got a long way to go, buddy. Not to pee in your Cheerios. I'm just telling you, it is what it is, you know. But so once we get this all established, which you kind of really touch base on, Chris, I wanted to, could you touch a little bit on, and I know we talked about this in our warehouse, on value, like okay, if you can get your soil where it needs to be, where it's optimum to grow that crop, can you tell me a little bit different in like variables in the value of the plant? Because and I know that's one thing that egg source, you said getting back to it. I always send my feed samples in for my beef, so I know what they're eating and what they're taking in, whether it be carbs and sugars and proteins. If you have healthier soil, what percentage do you feel that it will improve on the quality of the plant? And I know one thing, no different than almost any animal, the better your quality of plant is, the less they're going to eat and the healthier they're going to be. Correct? Right on this?
Oh, definitely. And probably the big one with our food plot crops is protein. So if you can ramp up the protein, they will keep coming back to that. So like it, not, oh, this is a good source of protein, but it tastes good to them. It's very digestible, and it's like you said, they're going to not necessarily fill up more, but they're going to raise more fawns for you, healthier fawns and stuff like that. Put on maybe a little bit more antler because that's in the protein. So a typical like alfalfa, if you are doing the proper pH and feeding it properly, so alfalfa, there's nothing wrong with going and mowing that. It's like a lot like our dairy farmers going and cutting a crop of hay. You can do that, and that provides you with the time to go and fertilize if necessary. And I would say a good protein, if one that you're in a food plot type scenario, you could get a protein of 21, 25%, which I think is pretty good. If you are trying like the turnips and the radishes, they could go a little bit higher if you're pushing them quite good on your fertility. But once again, that's only an annual. So they're going to feed on them. Could get to 25 to 31%, and that's a mixture of both the leafy vegetation and if they're eating some of the turnip or the radish itself.
Well, and then once they freeze, all the sugars come up. So that is, I think, where the carbs kind of take over. No different than, why do deer like corn? Well, corn is actually the cheap meal, as they love it. Second of all, it also puts fat on them. And deer know that they need this. That's why, why do deer hit plots harder after they freeze? Chris, you can talk about that. A lot of it is just really the value that comes into the plant that they really find digestible, and they know that it's good for them.
Yeah. So like the relative like feed value of like a corn, it could be 95 to 105 for corn. And another good one is soybeans. So they love getting into the soybean fields and eating some of the pods. Those are like 120 to 140 relative feed value. So that's, farmers have giant food plots out there, but you want to plant your own too. So corn and soybeans is never a bad choice either.
Oh no! Well, the only downfall about corn, and corn and soybeans, if there's a downfall, many farmers don't leave them. They don't leave anything for the deer. Many don't.
You're going to end up having to pay a farmer to leave them on, most likely, or something like that, or work out some sort of agreement.
Right, and you're totally correct. Corn and beans are one of the best crops you can leave for winter, bar none. There is no doubt about it. But on an average, the average farmer is, I feed the deer enough during the summer. I'll be darned if I'm going to leave them anything. Because to a farmer, a deer is a nuisance. And then the next guy that's putting in a plot, they covet them. So it's kind of a sucky war, but the average farmer is a hunter, and they are an environmentalist. They are an outdoorsman. They do think of the wildlife as well. But a lot of them, man, living, the deer is taboo, so it's hard to find a happy medium. I like to think that more and more people do think of wildlife as, it's not just a commodity. It's part of life. It's a natural thing to get out and hunt for a lot of people, and they enjoy doing it. I don't think I know of a farmer that doesn't hunt. Very, very few anyway. So, but it's a good crop. It's definitely a very good crop.
They're busy people, but they definitely find time for hunting season.
Yes, absolutely. Anything else, Chris, you want to touch on? Like I said, I appreciate you coming on and going through all this stuff. It's all about educate. When Brett wanted to do this, it was all about educating the public. And we didn't care who you were, what you were, if you use our stuff, if you use somebody else's stuff, it was all about just trying to help the public, because you know, in the hunting world today, it has gotten so commercialized and so, I don't want to call it greedy, but there's so much, I don't want to say hatred either. I
Use
don't know,
those
maybe
words, Doug. Use those words. That's the
jealousy,
truth.
you know, jealousy, I guess. You know, we wanted to do this to educate the public, and you know, and I don't care who you are. I don't, if you love wildlife and you love the outdoors and you want your children to get out there and experience what you used to experience in hunting camps and all of these things, you know, we're all for it. That is why we're doing this. We are doing this to help educate the public. It doesn't matter who you are. You know, if we can help in any way that you can pick up any little tidbit from today, which I'm sure, Chris, today with you coming on is huge, because there was a great educational segment here. This is all about, okay, why do we push this? Why do we do this? And it's all about getting the public to understand that this is all part of, you know, your future heritage. It's about teaching your children, teaching your kids. And again, like I said, I repeat this, just a lot of people who are not farmers that are doing this, but now you're farming. So, you know, the more you can learn, the more you can educate yourself, and just be what I call neutral, and help one another, and help to, you know, educate other people, because we all got one common bond here. You know, we're losing hunters every year. Every year there's less and less and less hunters, and a lot of it is because of the bureaucratic BS with restrictions. And I mean, nowadays you got to have a PhD to figure out what duck you can shoot, or how many fish to this you can catch, or where you can catch this, or where you can shoot this. And you can't shoot this deer, and you can't shoot this deer, but you can shoot this deer if it's across the road over here. And it's, I mean, it's gotten to the point where I just, like, I don't have hair because I can't pull it out anymore. It's just gotten to the point in life where it's frustrating. So, I mean, we're trying to get people back to the core of why we do this, and it's all going to be about nature, and having healthy nature, and having healthy animals, and hunting, and getting out and enjoying the sport. So this is the biggest clog in the first start of what you're going to do. Where is your soil at? So we appreciate you coming on, Chris, and sharing your knowledge. And it was huge. It's a huge help, because a lot of these, like I said, customers call me all the time. I got my soil test back. I don't understand it. I got my soil test back. I don't get it. I got my soil test back. What does this mean? What does this mean? And then sometimes I start telling them, and they get pissy on the phone. They're like, "Oh my God, I don't got money for that." And I'm like, "Hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you, you know, you can also take $100 and go throw dirt over the top of it. You're going to get just as much out of it if you're going to sit there and go throw seed down and not fertilize, weed kill, and do anything else."
It's all becoming a better steward of the land is what it really comes down to. Taking the proper steps.
Spot on.
Yeah, I mean that's the way I look at it, at least.
Spot on. Absolutely. You know, this is all part of the process. And Chris, we'll have you on again. I appreciate you taking some time to do this, because, like I said, you know, it's anytime that, you know, we can educate the public, and Chris, we talk about this so much when you're over. It's just about, you know, like, you know, where to us sometimes some questions might be, well, that is stupid, and it's only because we've known it for so many years.
You learned it somewhere.
Right. But if somebody doesn't know it, that doesn't mean that they're stupid.
Right.
It just means that they don't know it. And that's the problem. And I don't ever beat anybody down for not knowing something, because there's a lot of stuff I don't know. I'm learning as we go a lot of times. But when it comes to food plotting, I can, you know, like I said, I can go look at a field and figure out a lot of times without even testing it, just by the health of the weeds, you know, what it is, you know. We appreciate you coming on, Chris. We really do.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So as our viewers are, before you get off the computer, make sure you go to Horny Buck Seed, and you can request the kits there for the soil testing. And then just, I know when you get your soil report back, it's like reading a foreign language for the first time. And that's why any of the lab that you test with, or experts or anyone, is just call, and we will help walk you through it, because we want you to understand it and be successful. And then once you have your kit, grab your grandkid or grab the neighbor kid, because you are going to teach them about how to do a food plot, and hopefully they will fill your shoes and help you learn together. or eventually, as you pass it on to your kids, they'll be able to do as good of a food plot as you have been able to grow. So appreciate it, Brett and Doug. It was great, and I look forward to the next one.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
again,
you, Chris.
Chris.
Take care.